Everybody's doing well on this fine Sunday afternoon. I thought it would be fun to go back and, based on the amount of criticism I have seen from Ghost Recon Breakpoint, to go back and look at the Division 2 7 months later. So there's a free play weekend going on right now. You could download the game for free, jump into it, your progress carries over. There's also a discount on the store if you decide to pick up a digital copy, and I'm sure Best Buy and Amazon and all those other companies are matching that discount right now if you prefer physical over digital. Division is one of those live service games that is constantly evolving and constantly changing. And I don't just mean in terms of content and how things are navigated, and we'll take a look a little bit at that towards the end of this video, but I mean in terms of patches and upgrades and that sort of thing. So I played this game in an early beta state a long time ago, way before it came out. Did a lot of beta testing for it, and I was not impressed with the graphical quality of the game then. The game launched. I did a video on it, if you recall, saying that I thought a lot of the issues had not yet been fixed. But here we are 7 months later. I think at this point, graphically, the game is what it's going to be. I don't think you're going to see any more major patches coming into this. A lot of the Ubisoft team has shifted onto other projects, and so I thought it'd be fun to take a look at and see if we notice things like pop-up and how smooth transitions are and all that sort of thing. So I'll talk through what I see as I see it, and I will also point out some of the really cool UI things that I feel like the game has done along the way. So initially, I'm going to take a step back, and I did the same thing on this previous video. I want you to take a look at that soccer ball right there. And this is something that has bothered me that a lot of Ubisoft games do. They really want you to have a lot of graphical fidelity, but they exchange it for frame rate. So in order to keep the frame rate good, our draw distance is very, very short, and you could see that soccer ball has some pretty quick pop-in. That is not that far from my character. Now, out in the horizon over there, keep an eye on the capital as we run towards it. You'll notice there were some explosions I saw a minute ago. It kind of had a weird look to it. That's something that I understand in incredibly long distances. You know, even looking out there, like at those lights, for example, you saw them kind of start to flicker and get a little more detailed as we got closer. I'm okay with stuff like that, because it's kind of far out. And the reality is, if you had some sort of like scope gun or something, and you were watching, you were watching at a distance, the game would zoom in and it would give you a better magnification. So that, I feel, is a little bit more excusable. But the low draw distance is something that I'm not a big fan of, and I feel like when you get into a lot of those pop-ins, especially when we get inside this little bazaar area here, you'll see if anything has changed or not. We'll have to take a look at and see. Now, one of the things that I really like the Division does, and I think they do it better really than any Ubisoft game right now, is the amount of HUD that they display not on your character. And there's a lot of really cool cues. So you could see there as like I'm trying to go from one cover to another. It dynamically draws the X on the structure that I'll be at. You can also see below the X there's a guideline showing what route my character will take, which is a really cool touch. And I really like that. And I feel like the more we can get a cool HUD that does this and less than your standard kind of graphics, you know, in the bottom left corner or whatever, I think that's just a really nice touch. So we're going to go ahead and sneak over here and get into our first engagement. Something else that I really like about this game too is how well the gunplay feels. That's something that I think Ubisoft has really nailed in terms of how easy it is to aim. If you're playing on a controller, how easy it is, how like the vibration feels really nice. You have the over-the-shoulder toggle, which is really nice, which gives you a slightly different field of view, which really gives you a tactical feel. And you hear me saying the word tactical a lot when I talk about Ghost Recon and even the Division to a small extent. That I like that you can have these abilities where these really, really quick close corner battles where you can kind of sneak around corners like this, or if you were coming back the other way, you could sneak around corners like this. It definitely adds to some of the tenseness, and not that your character can't take a beating, because they really can, but it just makes it feel a lot more authentic to a military shooter, and it's a lot more, lot less run and gun in that sense, and I do appreciate that. Here's another example of how cool some of the overlay is. You can see that this chest is now outlined in orange, and the word loot is actually written right on top of the chest. So I can walk over and just pick up stuff from it, which is really kind of neat as well. We'll go ahead and dismiss these tooltips. We don't need them. Just going to be playing a little bit. But yeah, I'm noticing a lot of pop-in at a pretty close range that, like these lights here on either side of this exhibit, you'll see the right one pop in there, and the left one not too far behind it. This seems to be a little too close of a pop-in draw distance to me. Now, I'm sure if you could get over something like that, you know, you would say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And you'd say, oh, well, you know, I'm exaggerating, or I'm making, you know, a mountain out of a molehill. And I guess you could say that it is a console game, and the fact that it's running in HDR and a pretty solid FPS definitely makes you feel like, you know, they had to make concessions in some places. I totally understand that, but when you're this close to something, and if you play any of these shooters the way I do at least, you're constantly looking around to see where, you know, enemies are, and you want to make quick movement and, you know, quick attack choices, you know, rapidly. Any little movement in, whether it's graphics or artifacting or whatever, naturally catches your eye. And that's something that, I mean, I'm trained to look at that. I play PUBG a lot on the computer. And we're shooting at pixels sometimes. I mean, we are looking way out on the horizon. And I understand maybe saying the computer isn't a fair, you know, comparison between that and a console. I understand that. And the computer's going to be way more powerful, and it's going to do things a lot better. But I don't understand why this game has the sheer amount of pop-up it does. This is not present in Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Ghost Recon Breakpoint, though, does have some slightly different options in terms of how you want to customize it, the graphics more in terms of resolution or more in terms of frame rate. This game definitely went for resolution. It is very crisp and very clear. There are some muddy textures in the horizon, but lots of attention to detail. Even in like my character's the Division ring, that orange ring on her backpack, you could see it reflecting against her hair. You could see the individual wisps of hair. If I kind of put some light here, you could see them blowing in the wind. Got a lot of nice detail here in terms of each little individual trail of water splashing and leaving a light ripple before the water kind of returns back to its normal state. You can see the water ring actually come out. That's really, really pretty, and that is definitely you know, something that I notice. I don't think you could shoot out lights in this game. HUD is beautiful. Like I said, I think there's a lot of attention to detail in the HUD, and just how well the HUD just snaps to the world to really eliminate a lot of stuff you need to see on your screen. Now, smoke effects are something else that you're going to see a lot of in the Division, because this world is contaminated with this green poison, and also there are a lot of places that are on fire or, you know, just disturbed, that you kind of have to like almost almost like the fog of war in a sense, where you kind of don't know what's on the other side. Unfortunately, the fog doesn't really whisper anything when you go through it, but it does have a kind of artificial look to it, and I think that's a little frustrating because it's hard to see through here. So I'm pretty sure there's some enemies there. I was kind of shooting for them to come out. It's kind of hard to see what's going on through here, and I guess I understand, you know, the fact that since it is fog and they don't want you to be able to see through things, that would make the most sense, but it's a little difficult, and it is kind of breaks the illusion a little bit when it's clear that this is just kind of like a flat asset on the wall. So I think I got them all. No, I guess not. Let me go ahead and back up over here. Go ahead and use some health kit here and get some HP back. Alright, we'll just punch through here now and finish these guys off. Something that I noticed in this game too, and you see it a lot, I think, in all these games, and a big criticism is how effective the AI is. Now, something that I think this game has really going for it, much more than the Ghost Recon games, is that you're doing a lot of urban fighting. So there is just a lot of natural cover pretty much everywhere. vehicles overturned and, half barricades and a lot of different things where the enemies can kind of hide behind. Now, it doesn't mean they necessarily use it effectively. It just kind of means that you have to check your corners a little bit better. You kind of constantly have to be looking around, every little edge to see, like, where enemies going to appear at, and, where are they going to be hiding, because you're always going to be advancing. Very rarely you'll notice these enemies very rarely actually engage you in terms of chasing you. Typically, they kind of find a nest and they kind of wait it out, and they just sit there and wait for you. Occasionally, you'll see them pop out under cover, but for the most part, they like to kind of stay in their own little area, and they like to kind of just wait for you to appear. And you look at a game like Ghost Recon where you're out in the open, lots of forest, lots of terrain, and I mean, just standing between here and the White House, I mean, just look at all these different places that have natural cover. There is a little bit of defilade here, not a ton. It is mostly a flat game. I mean, not like Ghost Recon Wildlands where there's constant dips and cliffs and mountains and streams and such. This is mostly going to be in an urban environment, so for the most part, it's going to be relatively flat. But this game really gets a great benefit of having, lots of terrain to just kind of block and kind of help you, navigate through the world and really give the enemies a feeling of kind of intelligence. So we're coming up over here. They're going to go ahead and extinguish the fire for us, I think, unless they kind of already did. We're just going to walk through. And now we're going to reestablish our primary base of operations, which is the White House, which is cool because this will be your main hub throughout most of the game. I should mention now that I do own this for the PC. I'm probably about 50 hours in. I just kind of take my time, and I'm really just doing side missions and stuff, so I can't comment on if the story is great or not. I can just tell you that, the White House does get built up over time. This is your main hub. You will be visiting here quite a bit to do crafting and a lot of other stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look at the map, which largely remains unchanged from the original game when it launched back in March. There's different zones that they want you to go through based on level. You can go to any level zone you want. Unfortunately, the enemies will be just so OP, they'll pretty much one-shot you. There's really no advantage to going to some of these harder zones earlier on and just kind of like working through getting, like a good difficulty. In terms of like, you're not going to get a ton of loot for taking out a skull level enemy. It's just basically gated content intentionally to make sure that you don't go where you shouldn't go. And the way the story structure is laid out, primarily you're going to start working kind of, relatively south, then you're going to loop, a little bit more back over to the west here before ending on either of the two ends over here where a lot of the end game content remains. You see the levels 27, level 30. This is kind of where the end of the game takes place. So they kind of want you to go slowly, and they intentionally have laid this out to kind of tell their story. And I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue with how they do that. One of the other criticisms of Ghost Recon is that the store is just so prevalent, and they constantly want you to buy things. Now, something I could say that's good in the Division is the store is just its own separate tab. And although that's really true of Ghost Recon, this is in a little bit different place. So when you open up your inventory, you can go into, a lot of this stuff is grayed out right now because I need to progress further in the story to continue. And there are story missions that kind of explain how this stuff works too, which is nice. But you notice here, front and center is your inventory tab. This is where you can select all of your different weapons, your skills, your loadouts. Very easy, and just by hitting the trigger buttons at the top here, I can navigate through all of the different currencies and materials, and quick look at some of my character statistics, because this game does have a very heavy RPG element to it. So health on kill, health regeneration, all that kind of stuff does play a factor, particularly when you get into endgame rating content and you get into some of the later progression. This is something that is really useful to kind of min and max, and you want to build up a team to have different abilities. So right now I'm doing a lot more armor build, and I play with a shotgun. So when I play with my group online, I'm usually kind of one of the front guys, more of a tank type role. But you could see here where this is all laid out very easily for you to navigate through. And then you have all the nice tutorials here. And you notice as I cycle through this map over and over, never once does the store pop up. This is basically its own instance area, except for the apparel tab. Now, the way that the apparel tab works is, you saw me earlier, and I believe I have a couple things, probably because I've done some playing and, I don't know, beta testing, whatever. I do have some stuff that I can already equip. You see some different shirts here. It isn't until I have to go over to the apparel store to click on that, which actually launches the actual store. Now you're getting into things that require real money, these premium credits. You could see here that they always have different gun skins and hats and emotes and premiums, all this kind of stuff here. But it's really kind of tucked away, and that's something that I like. So again, hitting the options button, I could either go straight down to the content store here or inventory, have to tab over to apparel, tab over to apparel store, and open it up. I like that. That's something that I think Ghost Recon can definitely learn from, that in cycling through my normal wear and tear, I'm going to load up a game, I'm going to get a bunch of loot. After the mission, me and my friends are going to be standing around, what did you get? You're just going to be cycling through these tabs very rapidly to get all the different pieces of gear that you want. And the store never really gets in the way. And I guess that's my point here, is that Ghost Recon store does get in the way. It is part of that main progression of how you're going to navigate through the various menus. And that's something that I don't understand why the different UI teams that are involved from Ubisoft took such a different approach for one game as opposed to another. You never feel like you're not getting progression in any of those games. You really don't. You're always getting gear, you're always getting guns, you're always getting cosmetic items, skill points, stats, collectibles, all that sort of thing. But unfortunately, this game does a much better job of hiding it. Now, I'm letting this cutscene play out briefly because I want you to notice one of the other major problems with this game, and that is the pre-caching. You'll notice a lot of textures will appear completely muddy and blurry, like some of those figurines on the table there. And you'll see them actually pop in almost before your eyes and load up with more realistic textures. This, unfortunately, is something that is prevalent through the entire game. And it really shows that even in a cutscene, which the camera is in a predetermined location, showing you a very specific portion of the game, showing you a very specific camera angle, that the game struggles with something like this, because you're going to see it a lot in the actual gameplay as well. And it's going to look ugly, and your character is going to start off looking like a very low poly person, and then slowly assemble in. And considering this game has a ridiculous amount of load times, I'm just going to go ahead and blow through this, a ridiculous amount of load time, and I'm talking upwards of 4 to 5 minutes on the PlayStation 4 Pro. When you turn on the game, from the time you turn it on to the time you actually get into actual gameplay, it seems like there is a lot of preloading that's going on. And a lot of people say, well, geez, the great thing is, once you're in the game, there really is no more loading. But look at the sacrifice you make for that to actually happen, because ultimately what happens is the game is always playing this kind of catch-up. It's always trying its best to keep you, to keep progress flowing, and you do get these really ugly moments where things are just kind of catching up. And it's very kind of, ugly and misleading, and it's distracting, honestly, more than anything. Another good example here of what I was talking about was some of the fog effects. Very, very difficult to tell what's going on out in the horizon. Unfortunately, I can't use iron sights. Let me go and open the map. I guess it's still trying to show me some tutorial stuff. There you go. You can see your map. You can set a waypoint. Yep, we know that. And end tutorial. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can see what I mean about some of the graphics, particularly here. It's very, very hard to tell what's going on outside. And but they do a great use of the HUD. The lighting effects are phenomenal. I think some of these reflections are really good. I don't know if your character has a shadow in this game. Yep, you do. It's cool. You can see your shadow kind of elongated on the wall there, because you're closer to the light source. And the closer you get, the bigger it gets. And the farther away you get, the smaller it gets. They did a really good job of a lot of immersive stuff, I think. I really think that they did a really good job with that. It's just some of the, the choices that they made in terms of showing you the best presentation. I would argue that a lot of people would probably be happy with a slightly lower resolution version of this game in exchange for a little better draw distance. I understand a lot of times games have that invisible horizon, but I showed you that soccer ball at the beginning of this video. You've seen a lot of pop-ups, particularly even in cutscenes, that really does take away from the overall package. But I think they did a good job with it, and I can tell you guys from my personal playthrough and my experience that the game does have a lot of content to offer. Each map is very, very detailed. There are a slew of collectibles and treasures and side quests and repeatables and world events that are constantly occurring as you begin to build up and take back the capital area. You'll build up different settlements, and you'll build up different, there'll be different needs. You'll see a lot of NPC characters walking around, basically working on their day-to-day stuff. You could see them going out on water runs. You could see them, fighting for survival. And you're just going to kind of walk through and help out. And it's just hard for me as I'm walking, just looking at the sheer amount of pop-up here. But, yeah, so I thought it'd be fun to just take a look back at it. I kind of suspected the reality was that a lot of these games, a lot of the, settings and stuff in the game just weren't going to be fixed in terms of graphics. I think a lot of the hard coding is done early on and not changed. I think you do get stuff that's like a nice quality of life improvement on some stuff, particularly with some of the menus, and I think how well they've done a good job of streamlining the loot flow process in terms of picking things up, equipping them very quickly from different menus, getting in and out of the content that matters. But you're just going to have to accept that on this particular iteration of this game, running on the PlayStation 4 Pro installed, not on a CD, this is installed on my hard drive. I think you're just going to have to accept that it's going to have a lot of ugly popping, and you're going to have a lot of ugly texture things that you're just going to have to accept. And if you don't mind that, I think it's a great game. Buried under all of that, beautiful. And I think they've done a really good job with certain effects, lighting, water, some of the shadows, some of the overall graphical fidelity. I think they've done a really nice job of really making the world feel and look alive. And I think you're going to have fun losing yourself in this adventure. I know I did, and I'm still playing through it. I'm a big fan of the Ubisoft open world experiences, especially ones that involve guns, and this game has all of that in spades. So just wanted to do a quick kind of recap, take a look back, reflect on what happened during, this game, some of the development, see if things have changed, see how they looked. So with that, I think I'm going to close out this video. If you're interested, as I mentioned, this is currently on sale through the rest of the weekend. I have no doubt this game will drop to $25 on or around Black Friday. But if you're a fan and you can't wait, I don't think the asking price right now that they're asking for, which is about $30, is a bad price at all. I think you're going to enjoy this game. You're going to have a lot of fun looting and shooting. It's definitely better with your friends, but it can absolutely be played in a lone wolf mode, and you can have fun looting and taking back DC and having a great old time. So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.